What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I want to go over something that I see a lot of people ask about, especially on Twitter, when I do Ask Me Anythings or just kind of interact with people, but surprisingly, there's not a lot of content on it. In today's video, what I'm going to do is talk about the differences between Amazon FBA and Shopify Dropshipping. My goal with this video is to help you get an understanding of each one so you can make a more informed decision. So what I recommend you do when you're watching this video is to take a piece of paper, make a little T-chart like I've done here. Just put Amazon on one side, Shopify on the other side, and then make some rows that say budget, logistics, media buying, and nature of the platform. So the way I'm gonna go through this video is to pick one at a time and then tell you everything about them, and then we'll move on to the next one. So I'm gonna start with Amazon, and the most important question of all that everybody always needs an answer for that they almost never get is, how much is this gonna cost me? So with Amazon, I would say a healthy budget nowadays is about $2,500 to $3,000. Now, you're not gonna spend all of that right up front. It's not just like you sign on to Amazon and you have to spend all that money right away. That's a good budget for the first 8 weeks, depending on how fast you move. Now, that budget is gonna go likely to softwares like Jungle Scout, Viral Launch, Helium 10. Those softwares help you understand which products are good, where the market is moving, and how things kind of flow on Amazon. These softwares usually cost anywhere from $50 to $100 a month, and you don't necessarily need to keep paying them month over month over month. You could pay for like 1 or 2 months, use them, get your products moving, and if things are going really well, you could cancel the subscription. After that, you're gonna spend money on samples. So that's when you go to factories in China and you say, hey, I like this product, I wanna get some samples from it to test the quality, see what it's like, so kind of put it through the ringer and see if it's a good product. And then lastly, what you're gonna end up doing is spending the remaining amount or some of it on your first batch of inventory. Now, when it comes to samples, that's once you have a couple products that you like and you wanna see if the factory actually makes good, reliable products. Samples are usually free, you just have to pay air freight. So if you're in the United States, you're gonna pay anywhere from $80 to $200 for samples. I've paid anywhere from $50 for some samples all the way up to $300. It kind of just depends on the factory, it depends on how much they're sending you, and it doesn't really matter, it's just kind of a sunk cost early on. You can take the samples if the product itself is fine and kind of flip it on Craigslist or eBay to get some money back. And that kind of does give you some data. So if you put it on eBay and it sells pretty quick, chances are it's gonna do pretty well on Amazon. But for the most part, understand that when it comes to samples, that's money that's kind of going into R&D. You don't expect to get that money back. Now, lastly, what's gonna happen is the remaining amount of money you have at this point should be about $2,000. That's what you're gonna spend on your first batch of inventory. Now, when it comes to inventory on Amazon, you don't have to spend all that money. Most factories have an MOQ, minimum order quantity, but that's just on Alibaba so people don't come in and ask for 1 or 2 units. You can always negotiate down a little bit. I've had factories that said their MOQ was 10,000, give me an order of 1,000 units. Now, depending on your risk aversion, if you feel really, really good about a product, all the numbers line up and everything makes sense, you could go ahead and order 100 units or 200 units or 300 units. I wouldn't recommend that. I would say to start off small with about 50 to 100, because the situation you don't want to be in is ordering hundreds of units for your first product, getting them on Amazon, and then realizing that you can't sell them and it's a terrible, terrible market, because now you have all these units that you paid to ship into Amazon, but they're not moving. Whereas if you find a product that's really, really good, you only have 100 units of it, you send it into Amazon and it sells out within a week. Obviously, that's not the most ideal situation because now you have to wait a couple weeks to get more units, but at least you know that this is a product that's gonna sell really well. Now I'm gonna go over logistics for Amazon. So the way FBA works is you have to have inventory on hand to sell on Amazon. Amazon's not a fan of drop shipping. Customers don't expect products to take very long to get to them. So if your products are taking way too long to make it to their destination, Amazon's gonna ding you pretty hard, and chances are you're gonna get bad. If you wanna save money, if you wanna increase your profitability, and you don't mind going to the post office a couple of times a week, then you should keep the inventory on hand for a little while, and that'll teach you to package everything properly, and you could just leave a little note in the package itself for your customer. Don't ask them to write a review, just leave a little thank you note. That is something that works really well and customers love that. After that, in terms of what costs a little bit more but gives you a little bit more convenience, is using a third-party fulfillment warehouse. So these warehouses have everything locked in. They can give you a quote in terms of how much space you're gonna take, how many packages you're gonna move, and they'll invoice you at the end of the month or whatever it is. And there's different softwares you could use to kind of connect your Amazon account to theirs, or just give them a account with guest access. Now, this is gonna be a little bit more expensive because it's gonna cut into your margins, but it gives you the convenience of not having to worry about shipping everything out and kind of going to the post office. And realistically, once you get to about 20 to 30 orders a day, depending on how much time you have for yourself, you're not gonna wanna keep doing that. You're not gonna wanna keep sending everything out yourself, so it would be nice to outsource that. Now, the last option here, as far as logistics are concerned, is you can send all your products into Amazon FBA. The major convenience here is that all your product listings will be on Prime, so customers will get them really quickly and they'll be really happy. You won't have to worry about anything because every time you make a sale, you'll just get a notification that, hey, we've shipped a product out that you sold. The last major benefit that I think is kind of overlooked a lot of times is if anything happens to the packaging or the product or anything like that, and it doesn't get to a customer or a customer is unhappy and they leave a negative review on your seller profile, Amazon will take responsibility for it and they'll knock that negative review off. Now, that's not a review on the product itself, it's on your seller profile, which is actually really important because if you get too many bad reviews on your seller profile, you're just not gonna be able to sell on Amazon. Those are the major benefits. The only downside when it comes to FBA is it is much more expensive than the other two options. So you are giving up much more margin to have that level of convenience, but overall, once you're kind of getting in the steady flow of things and your products are selling really, really well, Prime is super, super helpful. It makes things super convenient. And you basically just get to a point where you have a well-oiled machine and Amazon just kind of keeps sending you emails like, hey, you've sold a product and we shipped it. So it can be really, really beneficial. My goal is always to ship the first 50 to 100 orders myself. It kind of gives me a different understanding of the business. And it also allows me to build a deeper connection with my customers and understand any pain points that they might have and just kind of what their experience is like. So that's what I would recommend, but depending on how much time you have these other two options as well. Now, when it comes to media buying on Amazon, which essentially is just advertising, that's an oversimplification, but you understand. When it comes to media buying and paid traffic on Amazon, your biggest opportunity for that is gonna be in paid search. So when somebody goes to Amazon and they search for a product, if they search a generic term, the first row, if you go and look at it, will always say sponsored products. Those placements are paid for by people who want their product to come up first. And every time you click on it, that person gets charged for that click. Now with Amazon, if you pay for that space, you'll get your product seen before anybody else and you're more likely to convert. That's the bulk of Amazon advertising. And the way that you rank for that is by bidding on different keywords that people search for to find your product or your type of product or anything within your niche. You can bid on whatever you want, but obviously you want to stay within your niche. And when it comes to advertising on Amazon, the costs are usually relatively low. Clicks nowadays can be anywhere from 50 cents to like $2 or $3, depending on how heavy the traffic is, how heavy the competition is. But for the most part, the CPA or cost per acquisition is relatively low on Amazon compared to other selling platforms. There are other options for advertising on Amazon. You can also do placement ads. That's usually when you have more than 3 products on your store, and you can set up a placement ad, which gives you a little bit more space to kind of have a little bit more creative input. And the traffic usually goes to a store or a branded kind of page on Amazon that you have, not necessarily not necessarily to a specific product listing. So early on, you're not gonna be able to do this because you don't have 3 products, but it is something to be aware of. And the thing with Amazon is as your account grows on Amazon, you get more advertising options. Once you're doing close to 7 figures, if an Amazon rep reaches out to you, they're gonna offer programmatic advertising, which is basically where you pay upfront for a really, really big campaign that's gonna deliver something like 10, 15, 20 million impressions over 6 weeks. And what Amazon does with that is they'll have your impressions hit on their entire ad network. Amazon's ad network is actually really, really big. They own websites like Zappos and Twitch and Ring. They also have the Fire Stick, the Kindle, all that kind of stuff. So they can literally show your ad wherever they want. But that is something that's available to you much later on, and those campaigns usually cost anywhere from $35,000 to $55,000. Now, to close out Amazon, I'm gonna go over the nature of the platform itself. When it comes to Amazon, the best way to describe it versus other platforms is that you wanna do more, it's more quantitative marketing than qualitative marketing. You don't have as much room to showcase your creativity and branding as you would on your own website, but that being said, you do have the power of advertising on the biggest search platform for products on the planet. So the way that I like to look at Amazon is you're essentially opening a store in the biggest mall in the world. People are always on Amazon. I think Amazon gets 200 to 300 million hits every single month. So the traffic is already there. There's people there people go to Amazon to shop. They go to Amazon 99% of the time to buy something or to look for a product that they might want in the future. Regardless, people are in a shopping mentality when they go to Amazon. They're looking very specifically for what they want. And if you can get your product up in front of them, you have a really good chance of making that sale. So essentially, what the two major factors that come into e-com when it comes to Amazon is Amazon has free traffic and Amazon has, for the most part, warm traffic. Traffic is a huge problem for most people when they start in e-commerce. So if that's not something you're comfortable with, or you have no idea how to start with traffic or anything like that, or you just don't understand the concept, just understand that generating warm traffic that's actually likely to buy from you is very hard to do. So Amazon kind of takes care of that. So overall, that's a quick rundown of everything you need to know about Amazon, from budget to logistics to media buying to the overall nature of the platform itself. And now I'm gonna go over the same things for Shopify dropshipping. So when it comes to Shopify dropshipping, it's a much different game than Amazon. So what's gonna happen first and foremost when it comes to budgeting is I would say you need about the same budget. You could probably get away with spending about $2,000, but the money goes down a much different route with dropshipping than it does when you sell on Amazon. With Shopify dropshipping, you do have softwares to pay for, like your Shopify account, which is about $30 a month, sometimes a little bit more. There's also different apps that you might want to use, like a heat map or something for pop-ups or anything like that, like if you have Klaviyo, or later on you want to get something like Zendesk to handle customer service. Most of those you don't need up front, but those software costs do kind of total up to like $100, $150. Early on, you're probably fine budgeting about $50 to $100 a month for Shopify, although you're probably gonna end up spending much less. Now, when it comes to the majority of spend, with Amazon, most of that money is gonna go, as I mentioned, to your first order. With Shopify dropshipping, the vast majority of your money up front and for the first couple weeks is gonna go to your ads. Now, those ads could be on Google, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, it doesn't matter. Most people use Facebook, so we're just gonna stick with that for this example. So when it comes to Facebook ads, you wanna spend, if you've never done any of this before, you're probably gonna have to spend about $1,000 to about $1,500 to learn how Facebook ads work, what kind of creatives your market likes, and just to get a good understanding of the platform itself. Facebook ads is not easy by any means, and it's much more varied in terms of what's possible, because in terms of creativity, it's entirely up to you. The process of setting up a campaign and optimizing is a little bit easier to understand. That's something you could probably pick up relatively quick, within a week or two. But when it comes to understanding what your audience like, what kind of creative compels them to buy, and what kind of copy works in your ad, you're probably gonna end up spending about $1,000. That's like just gonna go down the drain before you get a good grip on this kind of stuff. The other thing you have to understand when it comes to Facebook advertising is it has to be really compelling and really good, because people don't go to Facebook to shop. They're gonna be on Facebook looking at pictures of cats and dogs and whatever else, and you're trying to present an ad in front of somebody who's not really there to shop, who's just kind of doing their own thing. So you have to interrupt what they're doing, catch their attention, and then from there be compelling enough that they want to click the ad, go to your website, and purchase. So that being said, it's much more broad. That also makes Facebook ads much more fun to learn and a much bigger challenge to overcome. And every time you overcome something, it's obviously a lot of fun. From a budgeting perspective, the other thing to keep in mind is once you sell a product with your dropshipping store, that money comes to you, but now you have to go and order that product from AliExpress or Oberlo or from a sourcing agent, whatever it is. So early on, you're probably gonna be fine, especially if you have a budget of about $2,000 to $3,000. But understand that as you start to scale, you are gonna need to buy those products. And while you're making that difference in between, you still have to make sure you have enough money to buy the product as soon as the customer orders it and have it shipped to them. If you don't do that and you take too long, or you're waiting for the payout to come from Shopify and you delay ordering the product for whatever reason, it could add that much more lag time to the customer getting it. And by the time they get it, they might want a refund, and then you're kind of screwed. Make sure you have reserves so that you can actually order the products that customers are paying you for, and you can get them shipped out ASAP. Now, Shopify logistics are very different than Amazon. With dropshipping, you don't have to buy product up front. The whole point is that you don't hold product. So what you're doing is you're handling the marketing, the advertising, and the processing of everything, and you're selling that product at a premium. So if you find a product on AliExpress and it costs $10 and you're selling it for $50, then you're gonna make that difference, but you're also responsible for marketing everything and advertising everything. And what's gonna happen is once somebody buys that product on your website, it's up to you to go to the supplier or the manufacturer, whatever it is, buy the product from them with the customer's info and have them ship it straight to the customer. That's a completely different game, because you're handing logistics off to somebody else. You're outsourcing logistics to somebody who lives in a totally different part of the world. And while they have done it before, you have to understand that the challenges that come with it are that Products take much longer to get to customers. You have less margin, but overall you have the bliss of not having to store inventory or worry about inventory. So from a logistical perspective, the biggest difference is when you are selling a product through the channel of dropshipping, you don't own any inventory. You don't have to worry about inventory. You just have to make sure products are getting to the customers and they're getting there on time. And because so many people have started doing dropshipping the last couple of years, customers are becoming very aware of the processes, and customers don't really care to wait 3 to 4 weeks for products anymore. It's almost impossible that a customer will actually wait that long to get a product. So that being said, while most orders from Overload and AliExpress do still take a pretty long time, there are ways around it. What you could do is talk to your supplier about different shipping lines that they have, try to find a sourcing agent, or find a factory in the US that houses your product. There are factories on AliExpress that have products listed on their website, but they also have domestic inventory here. There's a lot of Chinese companies that have warehouses here. If you can find one locally, that's great because your customers are gonna get their products much, much faster. The other thing to understand when it comes to logistics for dropshipping is if you have returns after a customer already gets the product, that product either now has to go back to you or you just let the customer have it. Chances are if they want to return the product, you're going to lose money on the refund itself and on the cost you paid to the manufacturer, because most manufacturers won't take the product back. So you could have the customer send the product back to you. If it's in good condition, you could also just use it to fulfill an order that comes in the future. But for the most part, returns are kind of a pain. That's a quick rundown for logistics on the Shopify dropshipping side. Now I'm going to go over media buying for dropshipping. So when it comes to advertising for dropshipping, there's no native advertising on Shopify itself because everybody has their own websites and they design their own websites and all that kind of stuff. So you're responsible for bringing traffic to your website, and you can do that by advertising on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Google, whatever. That being said, you have to understand that those levels of traffic, while they are much more targeted actually than Amazon, they usually do cost quite a bit, and it takes a while to learn every single platform. So with Amazon, you can kind of learn Amazon and there's a good amount of traffic in there, so you never have to advertise off of Amazon. But with dropshipping, you need to pick 1 or 2 platforms. Instagram and Facebook kind of advertise together, so you're good there. But the goal is that you pick one, learn it really, really well, and then use that to generate traffic. These ad platforms are big enough that you don't really need to go anywhere else, although you should eventually once you start making more money. But just understand that early on you need to pick one, focus on it, and do really well with it, and understand how it works to get your store to be profitable and then to get it to scale. For the most part, when people dropship, they use Facebook to advertise. Facebook has so many users and such good targeting that it serves really, really well for generating traffic to your dropshipping website. That being said, Facebook is kind of changing things up right now, especially with all the stuff going on with Apple. So overall, you should have a strategy to learn one platform, get sales up and going, get your store just up and running to a point where you're profitable and you can actually kind of learn everything. And then from there, jump to a different platform or just kind of combine the two, like use Google, use YouTube, use whatever. So just to be smart, once things start to get up and going, understand how other platforms work, start testing on them, and start using them to drive traffic to your dropshipping store. Because ad account bans do happen, and if you are only advertising on Facebook and Facebook decides to ban your account, you're pretty much screwed. Now, to conclude this comparison, I'm gonna go over the nature of dropshipping. So when you make a store on Shopify, you're entirely responsible for how it looks and the overall feel and where everything goes. So with Amazon, you kind of just plug and play things, and it's pretty easy to figure out that model. With Shopify, it's a little bit more challenging, but the benefit is you have way more freedom to put things where you want them and to make things look however you like. You have a better idea based on what your customers want and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to Shopify dropshipping, going back to the analogy earlier of a mall, you got to think of dropshipping as having a standalone store somewhere, and you're responsible for getting people to come to that store. Part of the analogy, the biggest thing to understand is you have a standalone store somewhere. It's not part of a mall, so you have to get people to show up. People that show up to this store are specifically going to be there to buy a product from you or because they think your store is interesting or whatever. With Shopify dropshipping, you're pulling from cold traffic, so you have to do a really, really good job of selling, and from there, you have to be really smart about your margins, because chances are you're going to spend much more on advertising than someone who's only selling on Amazon. So while Amazon does have more structure, Shopify has way more creative freedom, just general freedom to do what you want, and way more control. So it is a lot of fun to be on Shopify because you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you are fulfilling orders and not pissing your customers off. In my opinion, Amazon is much easier for people who are more analytical and quantitative. whereas Shopify and Facebook ads is much easier for people who are a little bit more creative. Although those skills, you know, in terms of how much you need that skill, you can learn it relatively quick within a couple months to go on either platform. But just coming from a perspective of what you like and what you're good at, you should kind of move toward that platform, even if you think that the other one would be the right move or it's a bigger challenge. If you're trying to start making money with e-commerce and you don't want to wait several months at a time and throw a lot of money away into it, you should play to your strengths and focus more on that, kind of getting a business up and going, because you're going to learn a lot on either side, and only some of it translates over. The whole goal here is mostly to make money. Obviously, everybody has their own reason for it, but you got to be very clear on your goal, and you got to understand what's going to get me there fastest and what's going to get me to a point where I'll have more time and like location freedom to kind of do whatever I want. That's pretty much it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave any questions below. If you want to work with me and learn how to sell on Amazon and kind of get coached through the whole process, or if you want to learn how to sell on Shopify and become a profitable dropshipper, I also have a program for that. Regardless, you can hit the links below and apply for either program, and someone from my team will get in touch and we'll see how things go from there.